Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for turning excess stock into working capital, a NetStock presentation that will be done by NetStock. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. We will do introductions. There will be a question section at the end of the presentation, so if you have any questions, you can simply put those in the question queue and we will get to those and answer them at the end. The recording will be done, and we will follow up by sending out the recording to everybody that's on the presentation today. And so one thing we would like to bring up is Summit 2019. If you haven't registered for Summit yet, we encourage you to do so. It is a great conference that is full of just a wealth of information and education, networking opportunities. It's just a great event to attend. And this year it is October 15th through the 18th in sunny Orlando, Florida. And if you would like to attend and have not already registered, then there is a 10% discount code if you use PRP Artists. And if you have already registered and we don't know that, if you could just let us know, then we'll add you to our list. So for introductions, today on the call we have myself, Lisa Cummings, and Ashley Canale. We're both client strategy managers here at Interdyne Artists. And Chelsea unfortunately could not join us today, but she is our Chief Business Development Officer. And we also have Russ Graff, who is going to be doing our presentation today. And so Russ, I thank you for doing this for us. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I am going to go ahead and just turn it over to you.
All right, that works for me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Lisa. Thanks to all of our friends at Interdyne Artists that have done a great job of setting this up and working with us today to get this going. And thanks to all of you in attendance. We've got a lot to cover here in the next 30-40 minutes, talking about inventory and its impacts in our organization. So let's go ahead and get started. And so at NetStock, we work with small and medium-sized businesses, SMBs as we sometimes create the acronym for, across the country and really around the globe. We are a global organization. And of course, these are inventory-based businesses. So distributors, manufacturers, retailers, increasingly more than ever e-tailers, right? Or some combination of the above. We certainly see a lot of manufacturers and distributors going to some sort of an omni-channel or at least an e-commerce sort of environment, sometimes maybe selling through third-party environments like Amazon, eBay, and so forth. So these are inventory-based businesses, and so for the most part, the value of their inventory is one of the, if not the largest assets on their balance sheet, right? And clearly, regardless of that, it's core to the business. It's all about managing that asset well, because that's really what's critical to your profitability in the organization. So given the topic and the effort to put this together, I'm assuming that those of you that are either listening to me live or listening to this recording, that's you, right? You guys have inventory that you're buying and selling, and you understand the challenge of managing that properly and how important that is to the organization. So as we talk with all these firms around the globe, we learn more about them. So, how do most SMBs, how do most of these small, medium-sized businesses manage their inventory, this critical asset that we just defined? Well, certainly all of you have some sort of an accounting or ERP application. Obviously, in this audience, that would be a Dynamics Great Plains or GP type application. And often there are third-party applications that are added to that for different purposes, and we'll talk about some of those. And in addition to that, we often see spreadsheets somewhere in the mix, maybe for financial budgeting or other purposes within the organization. And so we see a lot of use of Excel spreadsheets and other Office applications as well. So there's a lot of different tools at play here, and we're going to talk about some of those and the pros and cons of those today as we get into the topic. But before we dig in too deep, I want to give this just a little bit of context, and that there is a difference between inventory control and inventory replenishment. Okay, there's a concept there that I just want to cover quickly. Because when we use the phrase inventory management, sort of a broader term, what we usually think of first is really what I would call inventory control. When we think of inventory management, a lot of us are thinking of things like handling the physical product, the shipping, receiving, maybe doing physical counts, hopefully some cycle counting going on of some of your more important items. Maybe there's bin management going on within the warehouse. So all of those transactions, right, of what's going on with the product in our inventory. So, and this component may include things like barcodes and scanners, right? This is one of those uses for where a third-party application may come into play doing some sort of warehouse management or scanning to manage the transactions efficiently and effectively and more accurately and so forth. So this component of inventory management, the inventory control piece, certainly does a great job of telling us what product is where and in what quantities. Critically important that we know exactly what that is, and GP and the potential add-ons do an excellent job of that, right? We now have a great understanding of what's where and in what quantities. But it doesn't really tell us the whole story, right? The flip side of the coin is, is it the right quantity of product at the right place at the right time? It really doesn't tell us that answer. It doesn't give us that answer. So this flip side of the inventory management coin, as I refer to it, is sometimes called inventory replenishment. Sometimes we hear the phrase inventory optimization. But the goal is to get a handle on future demand, right? What do I need to buy, and where do I need to prioritize those items? I might have, 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 SKUs, different parts, and maybe in multiple warehouses. And so that's a lot to manage. So now I know what I have, right? The inventory control component tells me that. But now I need to understand, is it the right level? Is it the right product at the right place? And unfortunately, that's where we often see firms using Excel in this environment to handle that replenishment component, to help me do some analysis, dump data, and try to understand the answer to that question. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But before we go any further, let's understand what the issues are, right? And what's the impact on your firm when inventory is not optimized, when you don't have the right levels, when the results are that you're running out of stock of some items, maybe accumulating too much stock of other items, and in between there's a lot of wasted time and effort. The folks that are responsible for doing the buying and planning have some real productivity challenges there. So clearly the worst thing that can happen is running out of product when a customer has a need, right? Especially in today's Amazon-driven world of expectations, right? You not only risk losing that sale if a customer goes elsewhere to find what he needs. If you have somewhat of a commoditized item that you're selling, you are at risk there. But if he or she has a positive experience with your competitor when they do that, you may lose that customer altogether, right? And we know that loyalty is not what it once was in our organizations. It's all about, I need product, I need it delivered tomorrow, I need the best price, et cetera. And so customers are not necessarily loyal to you like they used to be, right? They're going to go get what they need to get done because we're all such, again, with these high expectations. So, so the worst thing that can happen is you run out of product, and everybody recognizes that. But the way that most firms solve that problem is simply by buying too much, and they don't really understand the downside of that. And we'll talk more about that, of course. But then again, back to those buyers and planners in the organization, they find themselves running around, putting out fires, and sometimes in smaller firms, that's often an owner or a principal in the firm, and so they've got better things to do than put out fires, but that's what they find themselves doing, expediting orders to make sure stuff doesn't run out, and using all kinds of sort of manual processes, walking the warehouse, double checking things, counting to make sure that I've got accurate counts in my ERP application and so forth, and depending on, again, that person and their role and level in the organization, they might be getting yelled at by the sales guys on a daily basis for items that are out of stock, and then getting yelled at by controllers or C-level folks in the organization because they've got too much inventory, and we've given them inadequate tools. So some real challenges around this if you don't get it right, if you don't have proper levels. And it's never going to hit perfection and stay there for very long, right? This is a very dynamic environment. But for today's purposes, for what we're going to talk about in our session today, is we really want to focus on the excess stock issue. And as I mentioned, the easy solution to solving the stocking out problem is simply to overbuy, right, resulting in those excess, in that costly excess. And it really is a profit eater. and we'll talk through why that is. But the bottom line is, if you get nothing else out of this session, is that you can't solve the out-of-stock problem by simply buying too much. It's going to eat your profits and really eat your lunch as an organization. As part of this conversation, I think it's important for us to understand the difference between what we call safety stock, or you may refer to as buffer stock, and what I've just defined as excess stock, because they do get confused on occasion, and it's good to make sure we have a good understanding there. And one way that we think about it at NetStock is that safety stock isn't really about levels. It's really about a policy. It's a specific defined policy that attempts to understand and manage all of the processes and risks that are in the supply chain, right? It's intentional. It needs to account for things like some of the obvious things, like how often do I buy it, right? We call that our replenishment cycle. Lead times, maybe seasonality of some of your products, maybe some other fluctuations in demand. Those are things that it needs to understand. But it also needs to accommodate some risk factors, like supplier performance. We may have a defined lead time, but how is my supplier really performing against that lead time? Can I trust that? Can I count on that? Or things like forecast volatility. If I predict a certain amount of demand for my product, and how am I doing with that prediction, right? Which at best is a best guess sort of environment. So am I over forecasting or under forecasting, and what are the impacts of those? So I've got to have a buffer or a safety stock for every item in every location that understands and accommodates those different factors, right? And that's, again, intentional. It's really understanding how predictable is my supply chain, and having the right amount of buffer to manage what's the level of unpredictability, right? So it's a planned amount of extra inventory to have on hand to cover those risk factors. So that's the concept behind the safety stock or buffer stock. But excess stock, on the other hand, is the stock above and beyond those buffer or safety levels, right? And it's not policy driven. It's not intentional. It's often the result of the lack of insight into those issues in your supply chain. It's an inability to really properly define that proper safety stock. It's a lack of analytics and, again, visibility that really ends up creating a very hazy picture. And the easy way out is simply to overbuy, right? When in doubt, buy a little extra. And of course, that's a common theme and a common approach. And I get it. I understand that. And especially if you have those challenges, right? If you have the wrong tools, limited visibility, limited understanding of what's going on in your supply chain, or what could go wrong in that supply chain, or what is going wrong in that supply chain, then that's the best thing you can do is overbuy, right? But there are impacts to that, right? So let's talk about the impact or the cost of that excess stock. So for me, the biggest problem really in all this is that all the working capital that it ties up in that inventory sitting on the warehouse shelves, right? And you can almost visualize, if you think about in your own situation, your warehouse shelves with products stacked on them, and we know some percentage of that is in excess. Think about those products, instead of being boxes, but being dollar bills stacked there, right? So that's really what it amounts to. It's tying up cash sitting on warehouse shelves. And that money could be used elsewhere in the firm to fund other profit-creating initiatives, right? I mean, who on this call and who in small business today doesn't struggle with cash flow and managing cash flow? It's an ongoing challenge. We always hear the phrase cash is king. So we know that's a challenge. And yet here we are sitting with all these dollar bills, if you will, sitting in the warehouse. So every small, medium-sized business that I've dealt with over the years, and if you saw my bio, I've been doing this for over 30, all struggle with that challenge. And there's that stash of cash that you would love to get access to right now. So that's, to me, the biggest challenge. But there's also another problem related to that excess stock, and which is actually a little more tangible, because there's actually hard costs associated with that excess inventory. Carrying costs is the term that the experts use to define that, to describe that. And it includes things like taxes and insurance that you have to pay on those items, shrinkage that can occur, like breakage or obsolescence, And most of the experts, most of the analysts peg that cost at something around 20% of the value of the inventory. So that's a pretty significant out-of-pocket cost. So there's really two big issues related to having excess. One, it's tying up cash that you could be using elsewhere. Secondly, it's actually costing you money because of these carrying costs that are associated with all of our inventory. And the ones we can manage and have an impact on is that excess inventory, okay? So, again, conservative estimates and people that we've, met with over the years certainly have indicated to us that it's not uncommon at all to have 20-30% of their total inventory value sitting in an excess status, right? Really common. But let's do some quick kind of back of the envelope math, if you will. Maybe work through this with me in your own mind or jot some notes. But and to be conservative, let's use a 10% figure, and that makes the math a little bit easier as well. Let's assume that you've got 10% of your inventory in excess, right? And again, if we want to do some simple math here, or if you know the number in your organization, but let's use $1 million as an example. Let's say I've got $1 million worth of inventory on the books, and now I've got that 10% figure being in excess. That's conservative, right? That you have at least $100,000 worth of excess inventory. Again, envision those $100,000 in dollar bill stacks in your warehouse, right? Working capital cash that's doing nothing positive for the organization. And then on top of that, then if we use that 20% carrying cost model, that's another $20,000 of hard costs out the door, right? I've got $100,000 in excess. 20% of that costs me every month, every year, over and over, that hard cost. $1,700 a month, I think, is where the math works out to in that regard. And again, this is really conservative. More likely, it's more like twice or maybe 3 times these numbers. Most of the firms that we work with that have been trying to solve this problem with Excel or other manual processes will admit to us that they've got at least 20 or 30% in excess inventory, while at the same time, by the way, running out of other inventory items, right? So we're not even addressing that issue so much on this presentation. So you need to think about what your number is, right? Take a guess. Do you have $1 million? Do you have $2 million, $5 million worth of inventory? Is your excess number 10%, or is it more likely 15 or 20%? Right? You need to do your own calculations to really give yourself a feel for what's this costing your organization. So what can you do to address the challenge, right? So how do we address excess stock? And we've written blog posts on this, given live presentations at seminars and conferences and so forth. We've actually built an email crash course on the topic of excess stock, which I would be happy to share with you guys. You go to our website, you'll probably find that. So there's some depth to this, right? There's a number of things we can do, but in brief, for our purposes today, there certainly are some things you can do. And first, you need to leverage all the great data that's in your ERP, right? Great Plains GP is doing a great job of capturing, again, all these transactions, all the movements, and giving you reports and understanding of where you stand, right? You've got a snapshot of where you stand. And so you've got that source of truth right there. You just kind of need to dig it out. And that can be a challenge, I'll admit, right? In the typical ERP environment, I've got data that may be sitting in 7 or 8 different tables or files. And so trying to, get reports out and so forth can be a challenge, but it's doable. The data's there. The information is available to you. But so we need to identify first where that excess is, right? In what items? Where do I have too much? How can I get a handle on that? If I've got multiple warehouses, maybe the situation is different warehouse by warehouse. So identify where that excess is and in what items it's sitting, and then take some action. You need to, put it on sale, right? You got to somehow get rid of that excess. Put a discount on it, a promotion on it, and get it out the door. If you've got a relationship with your supplier and the nature of the product is such that you can send it back to a supplier, have that conversation. Hey, ABC Supply, you may remember I bought this stuff 3 months ago. Turns out I didn't need it. It's not obsolete. It's still good product. Can I send it back to you, right? Or maybe you have a friendly competitor, someone that sells the same product, but maybe they're in another geography. They really don't compete with you. Give them a call, right? Somebody that you meet at trade show events or something that are in the same industry. Give those guys a call. And hey, maybe I can send you some of this. Do you guys need some? I'll give it to you at a discount. Maybe you donate some, right? Depending on the nature of the items. Again, maybe you can donate it, get a tax write-off, and get it out of your inventory. But the point is you have to do something. You have to get rid of it. You cannot allow that inventory to continue to sit in your warehouse chewing up profits. You've got to do something, and especially the slower moving stuff, right? As one of the ways that you look at your excess items and the ways that you might prioritize that is identifying the speed of movement or how often these products turn. And the slowest moving items are maybe the ones you attack first, and maybe allow the faster moving items to resolve themselves through normal attrition, right? As I sell that product and move it out the door, let nature take its course that way. So prioritizing can be part of this as a solution as well. So that's the first piece. But then the next important piece is now you have to make sure you don't have more purchase orders out for some of those same items, right? You just spent all this time identifying the excess and getting rid of it through various avenues, and now we're just going to order more. That doesn't make sense either. So we need to identify if we've already got existing POs out for some of those same items. We call those surplus orders as a terminology that we use at NetStock. And because when those come right in the door, right, they arrive at the dock, they go right to excess again. So you need to be able to at least delay or maybe kill some of those open POs if you have any for those same items that you've already identified as being in excess. And most important, right, so we've got some tactics for getting rid of the excess we have. We make sure that we don't have more orders coming in for products that we don't need. And then most importantly, from a preventative standpoint, we need to develop and implement that coherent safety stock policy, right? We need to really understand where we stand with those different items, and are we really understanding the risks in those supply chains for those items, and putting a proper demand forecast in place. So when you do that, right, when we go through this process and minimize that excess and free up that working capital, you know, and we save those hard costs, those carrying costs, well, so what happens? Only good stuff happens, right? You can now you have all this working capital in addition to what you had that allows you to do some new things, right? You can launch new initiatives, invest in more equipment or people, right? Some new capital goods, develop new products and markets, do some additional marketing. Think of all the projects that are now on hold in your organization that you would love to get going on that you can't for lack of cash. Whether that's, again, purchase of capital goods or hiring new folks or launching new marketing efforts and new markets, now you have the ability to do those. We actually recently published a success story for another Dynamics GP customer of ours in Utah by the name of True Audio. A really cool company, great folks, and they had been on GP for a number of years. And within about 9 months after deploying the NetStock application, they freed up almost $1 million. I think they went from 3.5 million in inventory to about 2.6, so around $900,000 in stock that was removed from their inventory, right, that freed up that cash. And at the same time, by the way, improved their fill rates to their customers. Their service levels went up. But they, at the same time, because of our ability to help them identify where the excess was, they were able to free that up over time. It made some of these same tactics and efforts on over 6-9 months. It's not going to happen overnight, but pretty quickly, they made a huge difference in their organization, and they used most of that freed up cash for R&D, right? So there's a multiplier effect. Again, what can I do with that extra cash? So they applied that to some research and development, which allowed them to release several new products to the market that allowed them to leapfrog their competition. And they did some other stuff with marketing and some other things. I think they hired one new individual person as well. And so the multiplier effect, the impact of that found money sitting in their warehouse was really incredible. And they've been very generous in providing and being a good spokesperson for us, and allowing us to come in and do a video success story. And that's out on our website too if you want to take a closer look at it. But it really highlights a story that's very common, right? What we talked about when we went out to meet with the folks at True Audio was what we hear all the time, and that was simply that they were using the wrong tool to try to solve the problem. Again, like all inventory-based businesses, they had the problem, right? And you all do. And they had a very capable ERP in GP, just like many of you. They had good data. But they also didn't have the right tool to help them really get at the impact of all this in their organization. They were trying to use Excel to forecast their demand and develop these safety stocks and buffer stocks and decide what it was they needed to buy. And it led to exactly the problems that we've discussed. And they talk about it in the video, right? And they showed me the spreadsheet when I was out there on site. I think it was, I don't know how many columns wide and hundreds of lines long, and to cover all their items. And it was just a nightmare. And they lived in it every day, and it was giving them bad advice, if you will. So using a spreadsheet is absolutely the wrong tool, right? And that's really what we run into most. We actually sometimes have a little social media campaign that we use, hashtag ditch the spreadsheets. You may see that around. So, and I understand why it's common, right? After all, it's on everybody's desk. Doesn't have any cost associated with it from that standpoint. It's relatively easy to use, right? We all have that common interface in all the Office products where we can get in and get around in Excel. And we all have at least one, if not more, and maybe you're an Excel wizard on the team, right? Somebody that really can build some amazing formulas and worksheets. There's no question that it's a powerful tool, and there's a lot of great uses for Excel. All right, Excel and spreadsheets in general have been an absolute game changer for businesses for years now, decades. So no judgment there, no gripe with that. But it's when we try to use this tool, that Excel tool, to solve this problem of replenishment and optimization that we really have a challenge. First of all, there are some hidden costs basically associated with using the spreadsheet. And again, we've done entire blog posts, a series of blog posts and webinars on this topic. But making sure that we get accurate data and that's properly synchronized when I export that data. Excuse me, if I've got to extract all my inventory files and all my purchase order files and then my sales order files and maybe bill of materials files and all those kinds of things, that can be very challenging to figure out how to get that data and to make sure that it's all extracted at the same time so that those data elements stay in sync. And if you're involved in this, you know what I'm talking about, that's a challenge. I see people coming in early Saturday mornings or staying late or early one day of the week to do this weekly data dump out to Excel to try to get these massive spreadsheets updated with current information from the GP database, right? Then there's the issue, which I think is a real risk factor in many organizations, and that is there may be one person that knows how to do this, right? That knows where the data is, how to use those data extracts, how to manage the formulas within Excel and get the reports out and so forth, and maybe distribute those to different people, whether it's management or other buyers, so forth. If you're relying on one individual and the only one individual that knows how to use those tools, that's a risk factor. And unfortunately, we've seen some bad stories as a result when that individual either is out on vacation for a period of time or is out ill unexpectedly, or worse, just leaves the organization altogether. Those are really damaging time frames and periods of transition that are a huge risk. And then the reality is there's other inputs that need to be part of a best practices model that really the data doesn't even exist in GP or in whatever ERP you may be using or combination of tools you may be using, right? There's all kinds of external pieces of information that we need to know about in managing this properly. And even if we think we've got it nailed and we have it squared away, the fact is it's very dynamic. It's an ever-changing environment. I've got new products. I've got new suppliers. I might have new procedures going on in the warehouse in terms of receipt of goods and the timing of the flow of data and so forth. Other complications like if I've got bills of materials or maybe I've got a central warehouse environment and some of my demand for what I need to buy is coming from not just customers but also other warehouses that I supply, right, in a central distribution environment. So there are all kinds of complications. And the point is that, it's the wrong tool, right? Trying to do all of that, manage all this with an Excel spreadsheet is just not really workable. And if you're trying to do it, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's not good enough, right? And in today's competitive world, it's not good enough. So the fact is your ERP can do a great job of keeping you on top of all those transactions and organizing your data, but now you really need to be able to leverage it better for understanding what the right levels are, right replenishment is, what do I need to buy. So if you have any kind of supply chain complexities in your organization, you really need to have that data allow you to build forecasts that are based on data. I just had an email early this morning from another GP partner that has a customer that's asking some questions and talking about how they're forecasting sales, right? And how the sales team gets together, looks at some last few months of sales of items, puts their spreadsheet together, then they combine those spreadsheets and they produce this big report, and it's all sales forecasting driven, and it's really not based on good data of what actually has happened. And we know salespeople are notoriously optimistic, right? So yeah, I may have only sold 50 of those the last quarter, but I know I'm going to get 75 this quarter, right? Things like that. And you cannot base your purchasing decisions strictly on those sales-oriented forecasts. You've got to have real data that supports what's actually happened and dig in to understand why. Is there seasonality? Are there trends up or down? Certainly there's external information as well, right? What's going on in the marketplace, competition, new sales that we've won, new customers that we've won, customers that we've lost. There's definitely room for feedback from that sales organization, but first and foremost, you need to start with good data-based environments, right? And part of that is identifying and prioritizing your items. We've all heard of things like ABC analysis, ranking our items based on value of the inventory. Makes perfect sense, important to do that. And that can also be dynamic in nature, doesn't stay static forever, right? What I prioritize today may be different a month from now. But not only understanding based on value, but based on movement, right? How fast do these items turn? And so if I can get both of those levels of classification, now I can prioritize and have maybe different policies around each of those items so that I can now get optimal orders, because that's really what this is about, is trying to get the best, smartest, timeliest order placed with my suppliers every single day. I've got to have visibility of that data, right? So, so it's a function of getting the right tool versus the wrong tool. Because really what we're after, again, is that optimal purchase order, right? We need a tool that recommends to me quickly and with good foundation, good logic and reasoning and math that says, here's what you need to buy. That help me really create a smart order that really helps me understand the whys and wherefores, and then sync that information back into my ERP, which then will allow me to not only improve my fill rate, but at the same time cut down on my excess. So when you found the right tool, you'll know it, right? Because all of a sudden, all these areas are working better. You've got better results that become very obvious. But even if you have the right tool, I want to be cautious about this. It's still not going to work. And there are some great tools out there, but they still may not be the answer for your organization if a couple of factors are at play. One is if implementation is too difficult, right? If it's just simply too difficult to either deploy or understand or use on a regular basis. And there are some tools out there that are very sophisticated that understand the concepts and really provide a solution, but you need to be a degreed supply chain person to really figure out how to make them work. So if implementation is too difficult, it still may not be the right tool, right? The best tool. Or if it's too expensive, if it doesn't make sense financially, yeah, here's this great solution, and that will solve all my problems. But if it's $500,000 to purchase and implement it and maintain it year after year after year, then that's probably not the right answer either. Again, we're talking about small, medium-sized businesses. If I'm a big multinational, organization with a complex supply chain, and maybe that's exactly the tool that I need, and I can afford it. It's not too expensive for me. But for most SMBs, that's not viable. And the other challenge is just change management, right? If your team doesn't all agree to use the tool properly and fully and to its utmost capability and dig every ounce of power out of that thing, then you're still not going to hit the results that you're looking for. And that's a change management function. And so that can be just as important as getting the right tool. And so I just want to be clear that what we're talking about here is really not just an application, but it's a process that now needs to happen internally in the organization. And to be honest with you, that's not a NetStock problem. That's not something I can help you with. It's something you have to really champion internally. You need to have that executive sponsor. You need to have somebody driving the process internally. And I would suggest that you really can use and leverage the folks at Interdyne Artis that know your business very well. They're a trusted advisor. They've been through hundreds and if not thousands of implementations of various kinds of applications, from the full-blown GP ERP environment to smaller apps that bolt onto those things. They've got a ton of experience that they can bring to the table to help you understand, how to manage this change within the organization and get the most out of the investment in the proper tool. So I think we've made the case that really all inventory-based companies face the same challenges, right, in trying to understand and manage those levels of inventory investment for maximum profitability, because that's what this is about. Again, we started this by saying inventory is core to your business. It's the key asset, and if you manage it to a maximum level, then you're going to maximize your profitability. That's all there is to it. So I think we've made the case. So let's talk a little bit about the NetStock approach, right? When NetStock was formed some 9 years ago now, our team built a cloud-based inventory replenishment tool that really tries to deliver on all these key inventory best practices. And again, knowing our target market was small, medium-sized businesses, and using all those decades of experience that we had working in larger enterprises and very complicated supply chains, we said we need to scale this down, make this usable and affordable for the SMB marketplace. So we built a very user-friendly, easy-to-deploy app that's really designed 100%. Its whole purpose in life is to help you drive more profit from your inventory. And so cloud-based, on-demand, a browser-based application. So any browser, any device, anytime, anywhere, on-demand type of application, fully integrated, seamlessly integrated into the GP as well as other Dynamics ERP applications, right? So we've solved that issue of data synchronization and timing and extract. We've got that nailed. So we grab the data from GP and put it into our cloud environment. The tool that we provide is dashboard driven, and it's graphical and colorful and very interactive, so it's really easy to adopt and adapt to and understand how to navigate and get value out of it very quickly. And we really do deploy this concept of management by exception, right? Again, help me understand and prioritize my items so that I can understand if I've got 1,000 SKUs, tell me about the 200 that have a problem, right, that are out of whack. I don't have time and energy and whatnot, all the resources to look at all 1,000 SKUs or 5,000 or whatever your number is. So help me identify where are the ones that are most in trouble, right, where I've got challenges and problems. Bring those to my attention. Let me solve those every day. And then the next day work on those again, and the next day work on those again. And I can't help but have my overall performance improve because I'm attacking the biggest problems, the ones that are making the biggest impact on my profitability every single day. So management by exception is a big part of what we provide in our app. And again, understanding the small market that we're in, right? I need something that's rapidly deployed. We call it time to value, right? That within weeks, I'm starting to get return on investment from the application, from the investment of my time and money in that app, and make it affordable through a subscription pricing model, right? A typical cloud-based subscription model. So I don't have a big upfront cost. I can get into it quickly, and I can exit quickly, to be honest with you, right? It's a subscription. It's not a long-term commitment. If it's not working for some reason, we can exit. So with that, I thought in the few minutes that remain before we open it up for questions, I would just cover a couple of things from a application standpoint, just by using some screenshots rather than firing up the live application, just in the interest of time. Would be more than happy to do that with any of you individually. If this looks interesting to you, just work with your folks at Artist to help get that coordinated. We'd be more than happy to do an individualized demo and discussion with you. But just to give you a feel for the look and feel of the application, we're going to just look at a couple of screenshots. So this is the dashboard. This is 6 of the 9 different panels or widgets that we represent on the dashboard. And again, one of the cool things about our approach is we've got now, I think we're approaching 1,500 companies around the globe. We're very close to that number, probably in the next week or so, hitting that number. About 800 of those in North America. So we have lots of companies using this application that accounts for maybe 15,000 individual users that are logging into the application mostly on a daily basis. And they're all seeing the exact same interface. They're seeing exactly this dashboard. Everybody's on exactly the same version every single day, which makes our support environment so much easier. and because we don't spend a lot of time customizing and tweaking all this. What we do, however, is we can tweak and customize and really, I think the word is configure, what data gets represented in this common interface. So I've got the top 6 here representing really a snapshot, sometimes we refer to as a health check of your inventory. And we can be looking at a specific warehouse or a range of warehouses, a combination, a virtual combination that makes sense for your organization. If I've got East Coast and West Coast operations and there's 2 or 3 warehouses in each of those regions, I can look at them individually or combine them if that's what makes sense from a buying perspective or from a buyer perspective that's responsible for purchasing certain items from certain suppliers for certain regions, etc. So we can configure what data gets represented on this dashboard. And once we've done that, we can now see a really great snapshot of what my current stock holding is and how much of that is in excess and how many surplus orders I have coming in that are going to go directly to excess. And we talked about that a little bit earlier in the presentation. So I'm seeing a graphical bar chart representation. I'm seeing an actual value there, a total report information, which I can drill into and look at. For example, if I have, if we look in the upper right corner there, the surplus orders, I can see I've got 473 items on purchase orders right now. I could drill into a report that shows me all those items and all $6.6 million worth of those items. But if I also look here, I've got what we call a top 5 list that says here are the top 5 items contributing to that particular condition or problem. And 5 items represent 1.7 million of my $6.5 million problem. So again, if I can solve that problem today, even if that's all I can get to in my busy day and a million meetings and things going on in the organization, if I can solve those 5, I'm going to make huge headway in improving my profitability. If I look at my stocked out items, I got 973 items that I'm out of stock on that could potentially, based on demand projections that we provide, could cost me 1.7 million in sales. But the top 5 items representing that problem is over $250,000 worth of my problem. So solve those 5, right? Work on those today, and then tomorrow I'll get a fresh top 5. In this far right column, I've got some kind of proactive approaches, right? So not only surplus orders that I might be able to delay or kill altogether or maybe combine into a later date, but I've also got this concept of potential stockouts. I'm not out of stock yet, but we're predicting you will be out of stock, right? All the net stock analysis based on buffer stocks and supply chain performance, lead time performance, all those kinds of things, forecast volatility, what's been happening, how many POs and sales orders have been created that impact this item. I can predict with some pretty good reliability that we're likely to run out of these items, some 44 of them, before the next replenishment arrives. And here's the top 5 in terms of impact on my profitability, on my potential lost sales. So let's figure out what's going on with those, and maybe I can expedite part of an order. If I've got 1,000 coming in and I'm going to run short on 50, maybe I can have my supplier air freight 50 of them and regularly ship the other 950, right? Whatever the scenario is, I now have visibility, I've got access to that data, and now I can take action that prevents a problem for me. So we get really good graphics, really good analytics, really good understanding of how I'm performing. I can see very quickly whether my trends are going the right direction, right? Is my fill rate going up? I'm still short of my target, but I'm trending the right direction. My stockouts are going down. I'm trending the right direction. So I get a really good visual cues very quickly as to how I'm performing, and then the ability to drill into individual areas. I talked a little bit earlier about this concept of product classification. And so here's an example of how we will rank our items in an ABC analysis on one axis, but then a low, medium, high velocity of movement, speed of movement on the other axis. And we combine those 2 views and those 2 analyses into a combined matrix here, as we call it. And in the upper right-hand corner, color-coded green, I have my highest value, fastest moving items, right? These are my critical bread and butter items in the organization. And now I can set policies and procedures around these items that are different from the rest of my items. I don't have to paint every item in my inventory with the same broad brush, right? I can have higher target fill rates. I can have different parameters. I can override some values. I can do things that make these more important items more visible to me and that I can stay on top of more accurately. As opposed to maybe down here in the lower left, I've got low value, slow moving items that we've identified, quite a number of them. I can make some decisions around those. Maybe some of them I could have my vendors manage that inventory for me. If I've got short lead times and I can get access to the product quickly and from a good supplier, maybe I don't even stock those anymore. Or maybe those are nuts and bolts that are critical to a manufacturing or assembly process, and I don't ever want to run out of those, and they don't cost me much, so maybe I just change my replenishment cycle. I buy them twice a year in bulk and I put them in the corner of the warehouse. So I can now make decisions, right, based on visibility and really good understanding of the nature of the items. And by the way, if I go back to my dashboard, some of the color coding you see here are, here's my green, and they say AH and AM, and then here's a gold color, AL, and so forth. I've got these different color codes. Those are coming from this kind of analysis, from this kind of screen. So here's these gold items, here's these green items, and so forth. So now again, even visually, that helps me prioritize. If I can't even get to all 5 of my top 5 list, I can pick out which 2 or 3 are most important because of the color coding and the visual cues that the NetStock application gives to me as a user. Really powerful. Just a couple other things and we'll open it up for questions and wrap it up. But I wanted to show you an example of our forecast screen. So here's an example. We're looking at several months worth, looks like maybe 27 months worth or so of activity on a particular item in a given warehouse. So I can see how many units have been either sold or consumed in a manufacturing environment, whatever the case might be. And then I have that in a graphical representation, just a line chart that shows my historical values. And here's my 12-month projection going forward. And there's an algorithm that was used to generate this. We've got some 15 different very powerful, sophisticated algorithms built into the application that look at this historical pattern and then project future demand based on the best fitting algorithm, the best fitting result that gets me closest to reality. And then I have the ability for buyers and planners and so forth to amend that computer-generated forecast and add their own tribal knowledge. Here's where those sales forecasts and other market influences and so forth can come into play. But I start with a foundation of really good math, really good understanding of what has happened historically, looking at those trends and patterns and maybe even smoothing out weird spikes or dips that may have occurred, understanding when I was out of stock of some items that may have impacted the results in that given month. All that is, again, at your fingertips in the application to really make really smart decisions on what to buy next. And then when I get to that point of buying, this is what we call our purchase order screen or our kind of an order schedule. It's sort of a workspace, if you will, for the buyers to say, okay, show me everything that I need to buy today from all my suppliers, drill into one of those, kind of a pro forma purchase order, if you will. And here's the recommendation from NetStock. Based on all the information, here's all that stuff available to me again at my fingertips, what my demand has looked like, what my projected future demand is. I can look at my policy panel, see what's on hand, my replenishment cycle. You know, consider this, every single day, the NetStock application is calculating a buffer stock, looking at actual lead times, calculating a buffer stock, and then doing the math for my mins and my max and my reorder points every single day for every single item, dynamically, right? Many of you, no doubt, when you implemented your GP product, you put in lead times and you put in those mins and maxes and reorder points with some good thought. A lot of hard work went into that. You get that into your ERP application, and how often do you change it, right? It's not easy to change. Probably very rarely that those things are updated and they are now out of date. Here, we're doing that dynamically for you every single day for every item and every location. So there is just no way you could achieve those kinds of results in analytics without a tool like this. So here's your recommendation on what to buy. And I can adjust that, agree with that, add items. I can top off to fill containers or to get to certain cost levels to get free shipping or some price discount, all at your fingertips, all right there ready for you to quickly create the optimal purchase order to buy exactly the right thing at the right time with all that information at my fingertips. So I think that was the last thing I wanted to show you regarding some of the screenshots and the application itself. With that, I'll open it up for questions and turn it back over to Lisa or whoever might be there handling the process, and happy to answer any questions for you. Feel free to reach out to me at any point. Obviously, leverage your contacts there at Interdyne Artis to get any follow-up, and would be more than happy to have an individual conversation with each of you as warranted. So thanks again so much for your time.
Thanks, Russ. That was a great presentation, and hope everybody got a lot of information out of that. Does not look like we have any questions at the moment, but should anybody have any questions afterwards that you may think about and would like to have answered, obviously you could always contact Russ, or you can contact Ashley Canale or myself, and we would be happy to get those questions answered for you. And also, if you'd like to have a more detailed, specific demo, then, you know, we could schedule that.
You know, one time, what we often get as a question,
pricing.
Yeah, right. We often get that question about how is this product priced, and it's really, what's interesting about it, it's a little bit different than maybe what you might be used to, but it's actually based on the value of the inventory that we'd be managing the application. So if you've got $1 million worth of inventory, it's one price. If it's $5 million, it would be a somewhat higher price. So it scales very nicely. So if you're on the smaller end of the SMB marketplace, but you still have complexity in your supply chain and you got this problem that you need to solve, right, we can be very cost effective because of that way that we scale. But the ROI, regardless of where you fall on that scale, is really tremendous. It's a very rapid return. There's two pieces to the pricing. One is what we call a one-time activation fee, which covers our entire onboarding process. We've got a very solid methodology that we follow. After doing hundreds and hundreds of implementations, it's very mature and solid in terms of approach. And so we can get you up and running pretty quickly, and all that's covered. That whole go live, all the coaching, all the training, all the configuration is all covered by that one-time activation fee. And then there's a monthly or an annual subscription, which is again very affordable as well. So two components, and both those components scale based on the value of the inventory.
Great. And so the other question was about implementation. So what does the implementation process look like?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we've got a very solid methodology. I think typically for most distribution companies, if we're not bringing in bills of materials and manufacturing challenges, we're probably looking at about a 4 to 6 week environment. Sometimes if there's some complexity in lots of locations or lots of people to train and get up to speed, maybe that spreads out to 8 weeks. But very quickly, I mean, within a couple of days, we've got a dashboard. And then really the bulk of the activity is around that configuration and refinement of the data to make sure that it represents things the way that you want to think about your inventory. So distribution environment, typically 4 to 6, maybe 8 weeks. Manufacturing environment, maybe in that 6 to 8 week, maybe a week longer or two to manage manufacturing. But very rapid deployment, very rapid return on investment.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, that does look like that's all the questions that we have for today. So again, thank you, Russ, for taking the time and giving us the presentation. And if anybody has any questions or follow-up, please feel free to contact us. We're here to help you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, everyone, for your attendance.
Thanks, Russ.
Yep. Take care.